Chapter 1. Understanding Fear. The mind is a powerful force. It can enslave us or empower us. It can plunge us into the depths of misery or take us to the heights of ecstasy. Learn to use the power wisely. David Cuschieri. The human brain is one of the most complex things in the entire universe, and you get to own one. How wonderful is that? You don't have to be a psychiatrist to be curious about your mind. If you want to better manage your mindset, you need to understand what's going on inside that pretty head of yours. Ultimately, knowledge gives us control over how to use our brain's incredible power and leads the way towards a healthy mindset. But first, let's understand what exactly fear is, respectively, the fear of failure. We've all got to know fear in some moment of our lives. While generally considered a negative emotion, it serves an essential role in keeping us safe. Fear is a survival mechanism, and its purpose is to alert us to the presence of a threat or danger. Fear always involves two kinds of responses in our bodies. 1. A biochemical response. 2. An emotional response. The biochemical, physical response is universal. It is also called the fight or flight response, which means the body is prepared to either enter combat or run away. This automatic reaction is crucial for our survival. When we feel a particular threat, it kickstarts the processes needed to defend us against danger. Cortisol is released into our body, increasing our heart rate, focusing our attention, and regulating our breathing. No matter if our stressor is mental or physical, we will still have the same biochemical reaction. When you fear failure, the automatic flight response comes into action. The stressor is the task that needs to be completed. Rather than dealing with it or getting it done, it's easier to run away from it. Hence, you never have to experience a potential failure. The emotional response is personalized, as it varies from individual to individual, unlike the biochemical response. So, there are people who are adrenaline seekers, thriving on fear-inducing thrill situations. And on the other side of the spectrum, there are those who avoid fear-inducing situations. Even if the physical reaction is the same, the experience of fear is perceived as good or bad, depending on each person. Our core fears. When we avoid something, it could also mean avoiding the debilitating or fatal consequences that happen after. The negative aftermath we are afraid of is the source of pain and fear. According to the author and lecturer, Dr. Karl Albrecht, there are 5 core fears we all share. 1. Extinction. 2. Mutilation. 3. Loss of autonomy. 4. Separation. 5. Ego death. Albrecht, 2012. 1. The fear of extinction refers to our fear of losing our existence. It is essentially our fear of dying. Our whole body is wired to help us survive. Let's say you're walking, and all of a sudden you trip. Your body is naturally wired to grab onto something, to prevent you from falling. At the very least, you put your hands out to keep your face from smacking into the pavement. Your body tells you not to eat something that smells or looks funny, as it might make you sick. You shield your eyes when something gets thrown your way. We are naturally wired to ensure we do not die, which is why this is the most common and obvious fear. 2. The fear of mutilation refers to our desire to protect our bodies. We get scared of spiders and snakes because they could harm us physically. On an emotional level, we fear someone hurting us or violating our boundaries. 3. Loss of autonomy is the fear we will lose control. It is not that we naturally want to be powerful. We simply seek control over ourselves to ensure our safety and protection. 4. Our fear of separation reveals we don't want to be abandoned. Everyone wants to feel like a part of a group, as it helps to secure our social status and prevent us from loneliness. 5. Finally, our fear of humiliation, also called the fear of ego death, refers to the idea that we want to prevent ourselves from embarrassment. No one wants to be humiliated. We want to feel valuable, capable, and worthy of love. By understanding our deepest, most animalistic fears, it's easier to evaluate why we might have such anxiety even over the most seemingly harmless situation. For example, think about how nervous you felt before an exam. If you had failed, it could have resulted in you flunking college, meaning you wouldn't have been able to get a job. Later on, you won't be able to make ends meet and support yourself, finally tracing back to the fear of extinction. Also, you might have had a fear of ego death because you worried that your classmates, family, friends would have judged you if you failed. Using these core fears helps to lay out what it is that is truly scaring us. Childhood and failure. Children with an early established fear of failure might view learning negatively and even cheat on assignments. Rather than focusing on what is best for them, they place precedence on validating their ego. British Psychological Society, 2014. From such a young age, many of us were set up to evaluate situations with the fear of failure in mind. Considering these childhood effects, we can start to dismantle the long-lasting impact that is still present today. The first place to start is with your parents, peers, and anyone else who contributed to your development throughout childhood. Our parents can set us up for failure by being overprotective, emotionally abusive, or simply ignoring our needs. You might have been a child whose parents never let you fail in the first place. Challenge, disappointment, and other adversities are a natural part of life. If children are never given the opportunity to experience them, they are robbed of the chance to grow from these mistakes. Any parent would tell you they want to protect their child. Unfortunately, many parents don't know how to do that in the best way possible, so they become overprotective. Letting children fail means allowing them to recognize the scale of their own autonomy. They begin to understand their abilities and how decisions made now can affect things later. Some lessons can only be learned through mistakes. When that opportunity gets taken away, it makes the inevitable failure we face later in life so much harder to manage. When children have been sheltered from adversity their entire existence, they are at a higher risk of developing depression later on. They are robbed of the chance to learn from natural consequences that would eventually help them develop high levels of competence. Your parents might have sheltered you if they completed homework assignments for you or did your chores, meaning you had to put in little effort for your development. Though they might have been trying to help or make your life more enjoyable, they were also putting in the hard work that provides you with gratification later on. Even if your parents weren't overprotective, they might have had a negative impact on your development if they bullied you without realizing it, by laughing at some of your mistakes, or shamed you in any way you messed up. If they were always ready to snap at every little slip-up, it could make performing any task scary now. Let's say you had to do the dishes, but accidentally broke a plate in the process. If your parents screamed at you in response, it could make doing any chore feel quite stressful. If you got punished for bad grades, or if you've been embarrassed at school for getting something wrong, most probably that left a mark on you. What if you mess up again? Even as adults, we can still hear that voice in the back of our heads, making us feel scared. Moving beyond our programming. It's very likely you have a smartphone on you right now. Most mobile phones have between 32 and 64 gigabytes of memory space available. From pictures to texts to 1,000 unread spam emails, our phones can store a ton of information. While it might seem like a lot when you're holding such a small device, what's even more incredible is the amount of storage in your brain. Roughly 1 million gigabytes of storage available. It can seem difficult to change your thoughts around, but information like this reminds us just how capable we are to alter the way our mind works. Your thoughts are malleable and undoubtedly capable of change. Remember that you could watch TV for 300 years straight and still have extra room in your memory. Reber, 2010. What exists in your mind can be transformed. All you need is a real desire to do so and small, consistent changes. Become more aware of your thoughts and where they are coming from. Finding the root of the problem makes it easier to dig it out and remove it so it doesn't come back. Did someone else put a certain thought in your head? Is there a repeated thought that has followed you from childhood? Evaluate the origin to expose the weakness of it. Chapter 1. Key Takeaways. 1. Fear acts as a survival mechanism, and its purpose is to alert us about the presence of a threat. Fear creates two types of responses in our bodies: the physical reaction, which is the same for everyone, and the emotional reaction, which is different for every individual. 2. The physical reaction is also called fight or flight response, where we choose to either enter combat or run away. Those who fear failure decide to run from the stressor to avoid any possible negative results. 3. Parents, peers, or other people who contributed to your development during childhood greatly influence how you perceive failure later in life. Both overprotective parents and extremely critical ones can have a negative impact. Letting children fail is necessary. They need to understand their abilities, learn to push through, and see failure as part of life instead of perceiving it negatively. Some lessons can only be learned through mistakes. When that opportunity gets taken away, it makes the inevitable failure we face later in life much more difficult to manage. When a child has been sheltered from adversity their entire life, they will face a high risk of developing depression later on.